Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor Jun Cajigal, and for tonight, we will be tackling that million-dollar question. May aliens ba out there? Alright, so this is a very interesting subject in astronomy called astrobiology. Okay, so we will be discussing the search for extraterrestrial life. Alright, so how did I got interested in ET or extraterrestrial life? Alright, so you got it. It's Star Trek. Star Trek really had influenced me to get into astronomy, and eventually I really got interested in extraterrestrial life. Okay, so if you will take a look at this picture of the crew of the USS Enterprise in the original series, Mr. Spock, if you will look at the encircled person, that's Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock is a Vulcan. So, alien siya. Okay? And in Star Trek, The Next Generation, we have two aliens on board the USS Enterprise. So, we have Lieutenant Worf, who is a Klingon, and Counselor Troy, who is a Betazoid. So, yan, dalawang aliens yan on board the USS Enterprise in the Next Generation series of Star Trek. Okay. Alright, so we will be tackling this question, is there life outside planet Earth? Okay. So, and are we alone in the universe? Yan, tayo ba'y nag-iisa o may mga kasama tayo out there? Okay. So, let's first define, ladies and gentlemen, what astrobiology is. So, by definition, astrobiology is the science that studies the origin, evolution, and distribution of life in the universe. And in astrobiology, we shall address three fundamental questions. Alright, number one, how did life started and evolve? Number two, is there life beyond Earth? And how can we detect the presence of life beyond Earth? And number three, what is the future of life on Earth and in the universe? Okay, so those are the three fundamental questions that astrobiology must address. Okay, so first, let's define what life is. Ano ba talaga ang buhay? Alright, so the scientific community still cannot agree on a definition for life. So, mahirap talaga even in my biology classes, hindi mahirap i-define ang salitang life. Okay, the scientific community still cannot agree on a definition for life. But we can recognize life by what living things do. Okay? So, malalaman natin kung may buhay ang isang object by what they do, by what living things do. Alright, so, organisms, mga living things, they possess certain characteristics, okay, or unique features that allow biologists to identify if they are alive or not. Okay, so they are as follows. So, number one, organization. Number two, homeostasis. Number three, reproduction. Number four, growth and development. And number five, response to a stimulus. Okay, we can also add here evolution. Okay, the ability to evolve. Okay, now what do we mean by organization? So when we say organization, it simply means that living things are made of atoms, then eventually atoms, they bond to form molecules. Molecules combine to form organelles, then organelles make up the living cell. Okay, cells with the same function form tissues. Tissues that perform the similar functions form organs, and different organs form body systems. So that's what we meant by organization. Okay? Alright, what is homeostasis? So when we speak of homeostasis, it means the ability to regulate external and internal conditions, or in short, the maintenance of balance or equilibrium. Okay, so that's what we meant by homeostasis. Alright, also living things, they possess the ability to acquire nutrient and energy. Okay, so we have to eat. Like in the case of animals, food contains energy. Okay, plants, they obtain energy by harnessing the energy from the sun. Okay, through photosynthesis. Okay, all right. So and the energy from food molecules are converted into ATP. So alam po natin what ATP stands for. So ATP means adenosine triphosphate. Okay, and the body uses ATP as its energy source. Alright, in turn, we can move, we can reproduce, and the body releases heat. Okay, so that's what we call metabolism. Okay, metabolism is defined as the sum total of all metabolic processes, like excretion, respiration, and they all need energy. Okay? Alright, also living things possess the ability to reproduce. Okay? Yan. Like in the case of bacteria. So bacteria, they reproduce, they multiply through binary fission. Alright? Also, living things, they possess the ability to grow. So when we speak of growth, that means increase in size. Okay? And as the organism grows, they undergo changes. We call that development. Okay? Alright. Also, living things, they respond to external stimuli, like in the case of our eyes. Di ba? Pag tinamaan ng ilaw yung iris natin, the colored part of the eye, lumiliit yung pupil. Yung sa gitna, yung black part of the eye. So, we respond to light. Or in the case of the macahiya plant, di ba? Pag hinawakan natin yung macahiya plant, the leaves would close. So, living things, they respond to external stimuli. Okay, and also living things are capable of evolving. Okay, so when you say evolution, this is change over time. Alright, so we know for a fact that millions of years ago, ape-like creatures eventually they evolve into humans. Okay, alright, or birds descended from dinosaurs. Okay, so something like that. So that's what we meant by evolution. All living things are capable of evolving. They evolve because they need to adapt to certain environmental conditions. Okay, alright, so what qualities scientists believe are necessary for life to exist? Okay, so ano ba yung mga qualities na kailangan in order for living things to exist? Okay, so before we tackle with that question, we have to answer this first. Before yung mga qualities na yan, how did life on Earth really started? Okay, alright, so let's try to answer this pop quiz. Yan to, multiple choice quiz. Okay, so you have a time machine with a dial that you can spin to send you randomly to any time in Earth's history. If you spin the dial, you travel back to time 2 billion years, and then you walk out of the time machine. what is most likely to happen to you? Okay? So you have set the time machine to 2 billion years. So paglabas mo sa time machine, ano yung mangyayari sa'yo? Letter A, you will be eaten by dinosaurs. Letter B, you will suffocate because you'll be unable to breathe the air. Okay, letter C, you will be consumed by toxic bacteria. And letter D, you'll probably be just fine. So, my dear netizens, ano sa tingin nyo ang sagot dito sa pop quiz natin? Okay? Alright, so very good. The answer is letter B. You will suffocate because you'll be unable to breathe the air. Bakit? Ano bang ang Earth natin 2 billion years ago? Alright, so our Earth, the planet Earth was totally different 2 billion years ago. Ibang-ibang Earth noon as compared to the Earth today. Alright? Okay, the oceans covered almost the whole planet. So, our planet Earth basically is covered with ocean, water. And just 2% to 3% of the Earth's surface would have been land compared to 28% of today. So, kung alien ka, bumisita ka sa planet Earth noon, you will say that the planet Earth is an aquatic world. So it's basically covered with oceans. And 2% to 3% only of the Earth would have been land. Okay? Alright, and the early atmosphere was formed through the process of outgassing. So yung atmosphere natin noon, nagkaroon tayo ng atmosphere because of outgassing. Kasi maraming volcanic activity noon. So these volcanoes, they spewed out gases. And these gases from the Earth's interior basically formed our atmosphere. Okay, so the early atmosphere was formed through the process of outgassing, yung ng volcanoes. Okay, they spew out gases from the Earth's interior, and eventually it formed the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, and our atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen, 2 billion years ago, was crushingly dense. So, makapal ang atmosphere natin noon and completely unbreathable. Kaya yung sa question kanina, so if you set the time machine 2 billion years into the past, then pag lumbas ka sa time machine, you'll die, you will suffocate. Because our atmosphere at that time was completely unbreathable. Bakit? Alright, the gases in our early atmosphere includes carbon dioxide, methane, carbon monoxide, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor. See? Okay, and walang oxygen. There's no oxygen during that time, this early atmosphere natin. So, paglabas mo sa time machine, talagang mamamatay ka, you will suffocate. See, there is no oxygen. Okay? Alright, so what's the consequence of having no oxygen in the early atmosphere? So, pag walang oxygen, there's no ozone layer. So, 2 billion years ago, there was the absence of the ozone layer. So, walang ozone layer noon. So, what's the consequence of that? Anong implication yan? If there's no ozone layer, then there was no way for the Earth to be protected from UV rays. Because we know that the ozone layer shields us from deadly ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Walang ozone layer nun. Diba? So the Earth was bathed, was bombarded with deadly UV radiation. Okay? Alright. And there was intense electrical discharge. Talagang kumikidlat noon, 2 billion years ago. There was intense electrical storm, electrical discharge in our early atmosphere. Okay? Alright, so with these conditions, no oxygen, the atmosphere was made of methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, plus you have the lighting as the energy source. It provided some sort of chemical reactions to occur. Okay, so these primordial conditions plus lightning as the electrical source provided the ingredients to cause chemicals to react. Okay, right, so eventually these chemical reactions would lead to the formation of the first living cell. So in biology, we call this the abiotic synthesis of organic molecules. Okay, because of the primordial conditions plus lighting as the energy source, it led to the formation of micelles. And these micelles led to the evolution, the formation of the first cell. Okay? Alright, so we call this the abiotic synthesis theory. And the first cell was in the form of anaerobic bacteria. I guess in biology, you know what anaerobic means. So pag sinabing anaerobic, these organisms can survive even without oxygen. Kasi di ba we mentioned kanina that in the primordial atmosphere, there was no oxygen. So these anaerobic bacteria, they can survive in the absence of oxygen. Okay. Then eventually, after millions of years, some of these anaerobic bacteria, they mutated. Okay, some of them, they were able to harness the energy from the sun. So nagkaroon ng chlorophyll. And eventually, this led to the evolution of the so-called cyanobacteria. Alright, these cyanobacteria, they contain chlorophyll that enabled them to harness the energy from the sun. So they were capable of photosynthesis. Okay? Alright, and these cyanobacteria, they were able to emit oxygen because we know that a byproduct of photosynthesis was oxygen. Okay? Alright, so the fossilized remains of these cyanobacteria were in the form of stromatolites. Okay? So these stromatolites contain the cyanobacteria. And the cyanobacteria, through photosynthesis, was able to release oxygen for the first time. So they were able to oxygenate the Earth's atmosphere. Ayan. So, very significant ito because of the presence of oxygen, okay, that led to the formation of ozone. Alright, so we have here a flow chart that would again explain the dramatic change in our Earth's atmosphere. So, because of the appearance of the cyanobacteria, okay, they were able to harness the sun's energy through photosynthesis, and as a result, they released oxygen. And the oxygen in the atmosphere eventually formed the ozone layer. Okay, and you know the importance of the ozone layer. The ozone layer eventually protected the primitive Earth from deadly UV rays. So, ano ibig sabihin nun? It means that the Earth became conducive for the evolution of higher life forms. Okay? Alright, so because of the presence of ozone, the Earth became more conducive for the evolution of higher life forms. Okay, so we have to thank the cyanobacteria. The cyanobacteria oxygenated the Earth's atmosphere, and that led to the formation of ozone. The ozone made the Earth more conducive for the evolution of higher life forms. Alright, my dear netizens? Okay. So, is there any proof of this? Diba kasi theory lang ito eh. Is there any proof of this explanation of how life started based on the conditions of the primordial Earth? Meron bang pruweba dito? Alright, so there was an experiment that was conducted and the experiment was performed by Stanley Miller and Harold Urey. Right? So in history, we call this the Miller-Urey experiment. Okay? So Miller and Urey, they performed an experiment to replicate or duplicate the conditions of the primordial Earth to prove that organic molecules could be produced under such conditions. Yung mga sinabi ko kanina, like the atmosphere, having ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, and you have lightning as the energy source. So what they did is that they replicated the conditions. So ang ginawa nila ganito. Right, everybody focus on this diagram. So they were able to come up with this setup. So it's a some sort of a modified test tube. So inside the setup, you have methane, ammonia, water vapor. So anong ginagawa nila? So they were trying to simulate the primordial atmosphere. Diba doon sa abiotic synthesis theory, they mentioned that the primordial atmosphere was composed of methane, ammonia, water vapor, carbon dioxide. So yun ang ginawa nila Miller and Urey. So they included these gases into the setup. So the setup contained methane, ammonia, water. Okay? And also, in the abiotic synthesis, you have intense volcanic activity, di ba? So mainit because of volcanic activity. So they replicated that by boiling water. Ayan, okay? Alright, and also in the abiotic synthesis, there was intense electrical discharge, maraming kidlat. So they replicated that by including two electrodes. So when you turn on the electrodes, sparks would produce. So they were able to simulate lightning. Okay? So this experiment was conducted for about 1 week. And after 1 week, they noticed a change in color of the water, yung boiling water. Dun sa trap. Can you see that? Yung trap na yan. So they analyzed the water after a week. And, magugulat kayo, they were able to discover the following. Ito yung setup nila. So you have two electrodes to simulate lightning. The setup contained ammonia, methane, water vapor. The setup was heated to duplicate volcanic activity. And after 1 week, they analyzed the water. And they discovered the following: amino acids, ATP, lipids, sugars, the bases purine and pyrimidine, which are components of DNA and RNA. So, isn't that amazing, ladies and gentlemen? Yung experiment nila Harold Urey and Stanley Miller. So, they were able to produce these organic molecules using those ingredients from our primitive atmosphere. So, that's one proof already of the abiotic synthesis theory. Okay? Alright. Now, to understand the role of life in the universe, we must explore the range of environments that might support living things. Okay? Alright, so, ibig sabihin na to, ano yung mga requirements na kailangan in order for life to exist? Now, life as we know it requires the following. Okay, number 1, dapat may tubig, liquid water. Number 2, some form of energy like sunlight or volcanic heat from volcanoes or energy from chemical reactions. Okay? Alright, number 3, access to organic materials like carbon and its related compounds. And number 4, a sufficient, stable environment, like for example, a time to originate and to evolve. Okay, so these are the requirements in order for life as we know it to exist. this. Okay? Alright. So, now the search for life outside planet Earth, kasi doon tayo interesado, the search for life outside planet Earth has become the search for water. Kasi kailangan to, requirement ito for life to exist, di ba? The water. So the search for life outside Earth become the search for water. So bakit? Ano bang special sa tubig? Now, water is special. Bakit? The water exhibits certain properties, di ba? As we know it in our biology classes. So what are these properties that water exhibit in order to sustain life? Okay, so number one property is cohesion. Alright, cohesion. Okay, so here is a simple demonstration of cohesion. Yan, kung yan, you have here a penny, then kumuha kayo ng medicine dropper, you try to add drops of water dun sa penny. And you will be surprised how many drops can be accommodated by that small penny. Okay, because water is cohesive. The water molecules, they exhibit the ability to bond. Okay, that's cohesion. All right, another important property of water, important in sustaining life, is adhesion. Okay, so adhesion means the attraction between unlike materials. So the combination of cohesion and adhesion will allow water to be transported up the xylem in plants. So, alam niyo yung ibig sabihin ng xylem. Yung xylem, these are tubes that allows water to be transported from the roots to the stem and to the leaves of plants. Okay, that's adhesion. Okay, and as water moves up, the water molecules, they are attracted to the wall of the xylem. So we call this capillary action. Okay. All right. Another property exhibited by water is surface tension. Okay. Surface tension is the ability of water to form a thin film on the surface. Okay. So, yung mga pink na yun, yung mga pink na circles and yung mga blue, that's water molecules. So, water molecules, they can form a thin film on the surface. And because of this thin film, small objects like this paper clip can float on water. And because water molecules, they form a thin film on the surface. So we call that surface tension. Certain animals also, they utilize the surface tension of water so that they can literally walk on water, like this spider. Yan. So, itong spider na to, it utilizes the thin film or surface tension of water so that the spider can literally walk on water. Okay? So, that's surface tension. Also, water has a high heat capacity. Ang water, parang ano yan, parang heat sink, meaning that it can absorb a lot of heat energy. Okay, here is a simple demonstration of that. So you can see here this balloon. Itong balloon na to may tubig sa loob. And you try to heat the balloon. Ilagay niyo sa kandila. And you will be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, hindi puputok yung balloon na yan. Why? Because the water inside is absorbing the heat from the candle. Okay? So water has a high heat capacity. Anong importance nito? Now, remember that our planet is composed of about 70% water. Okay? So, our oceans, they act as a heat sink to moderate Earth's temperature. So, just think about it. Our Earth is 93 million miles away from the sun. So, malapit tayo sa araw. Okay? Now, water absorbs the heat from the sun to moderate our temperature. So, can you imagine kung wala tayong tubig? Diba? We would burn up kasi malapit tayo sa sun. So, our oceans, they act as a heat sink. Yan. Okay? Alright, so water is important in moderating the Earth's temperature. Okay, also another property of water is that water expands as it freezes. Okay, so alam natin yan, pag naglagay tayo ng tubig, yan, sa container, glass container, lagay natin yan sa freezer, pag naging ice yung tubig, nag-solidify, mababasag yung container. Why? Because as water turns into ice, it expands. Diba? Okay, so anong importance nito? Okay, now we know that ice first forms sa surface ng tubig. Okay, so at the bottom, it remains in liquid form. And this is important for aquatic life to survive, even in extremely cold conditions. Ayan, so sa taas, nagsosolidify yung tubig, pero sa ilalim niyan, liquid form pa rin. So, aquatic life, like aquatic fishes near the poles, can survive. Kahit na nag-ice yung surface, pero yung ilalim niyan, liquid form pa rin. Okay? Alright. And lastly, we have water as a versatile solvent. Okay? So, water can dissolve most substances. Okay? Hindi siya universal solvent kasi hindi naman lahat kayang i-dissolve ng tubig. Okay? So, water is a versatile solvent. Okay, my dear netizens? Alright, so, necessities for life to exist. Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with the habitable zone, or sometimes we call this the Goldilocks zone. Okay, now, the habitable zone, or the Goldilocks zone, is the distance from the Earth to the Sun that can support life. Okay, so maswerte tayo. The Earth is lucky to be in the right place for life to exist. Okay, so anong ibig sabihin nito? Ba't tinawag na Goldilocks zone or habitable zone? Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with the story of Goldilocks. Diba? So, when Goldilocks entered the house of the three bears, yan, medyo napagod siya. So, pumasok sa room ng three bears, nakakita siya ng tatlong kama. Okay, isang malaki, then medium size, and small. Yung malaki kay Papa Bear, yung medium kay Mama Bear, yung small kay Baby Bear. Diba? So, when Goldilocks tried to sleep dun sa malaking kama, hindi siya makatulog kasi sobrang laki. And she tried to sleep dun sa maliit na kama, hindi rin siya makatulog dahil masyadong maliit. But when Goldilocks tried to sleep dun sa medium-sized na kama, yun, nakatulog siya. Okay, the bed was just right sa kanya. Okay? Alright, so, to translate this sa habitable zone, the distance of our planet from the sun is just right for us. Okay, the Earth is lucky to be in the right place for life to exist. So, meaning, my dear netizens, hindi tayo masyadong malapit sa araw. Okay? Kasi pag masyado tayong malapit sa araw, it would be too hot. Yung oceans natin, kukulo yan. Okay? Ngayon, kung masyado naman tayong malayo, lalamig naman tayo. Okay? We would receive less heat from the sun. So, yung dagat natin, magiging ice yan. Okay? So, our distance of 93 million miles from the sun is just right. Okay? Alright, so we call this the habitable zone. So, because of this, life can exist. Diba? So, hindi mainit, hindi rin malamig. Okay? Alright. Now, my dear netizens, can extreme environment support living things? Kasi sa planet Earth, diba, may mainit na lugar like deserts. Or malalamig. Diba, like the poles. Can extreme environments support living things? The answer is yes. Okay, pwede. Kasi life finds a way. Okay, ganun ang living things. They can find a way for them to survive. Okay? Alright, so these organisms, these living things that can survive even in extreme conditions are called extremophiles. Okay, extremophiles are living things. These are organisms that can exist under extreme conditions. Okay, so we have your examples of extremophiles like thermophiles. So pag sinabi nating thermophiles, they can exist in extreme temperatures. So they can even survive even inside the crater of the volcano. Okay? Or halophiles. So these are organisms that can survive in very salty conditions, like in the Dead Sea. Okay? Or acidophiles. So these are organisms that can live in extreme acidic environments. So biruin nyo yun. So there are some living things that can survive even in extreme conditions. So these are extremophiles. Okay, so pwede. Because life can find a way. Alright, my dear netizens, I want you to focus on this. Ito, magugulat kayo dito. Okay, one of the most surprising cases of tolerance to extreme conditions is exhibited by this bacterium called Deinococcus radiodurans. Okay, ito astig tong bacteria na ito. Okay, Deinococcus radiodurans can be found inside nuclear reactors. Okay, Deinococcus radiodurans is found in the cooling jackets of nuclear reactors. So that means that they can tolerate extreme radiation. Itong Deinococcus radiodurans. Amazing, isn't it? Diba? Okay. So, pwede silang mabuhay in extreme radiation. Nasa nuclear reactors nga sila. Okay. Another surprising organism, okay, that can really endure extreme conditions would be the tardigrades. Okay, itong mga tardigrades na to, or water bears. Okay, they can survive virtually anything, even in the vacuum of space. Yan, itong mga water bears na to. They can make a living anywhere on Earth. In the frigid peaks of the tallest mountains. Kaya nilang mabuhay na kahit malamig. Okay, in the cauldrons of erupting volcanoes. Wow! And in the deep ocean vents on the bottom of the sea. Yan, itong mga tardigrades na to, talagang they can live in extreme conditions. Okay? Alright, so those are the extreme. Ba't ko bilanggit pala itong mga extremophiles na to anyway? So that means that such living things can even survive on the lunar surface. Diba? Like, for example, itong mga tardigrades na to, lagay nyo sila sa buwan. Pwede. Okay? Or itong Deinococcus radiodurans, lagay nyo sa surface ng moon. They can survive. Or sa asteroid, pag mayroong asteroid dyan, they can survive. Or sa Mars, di ba? Okay. Now, life as we know it on Earth requires liquid water, energy, nutrients, habitable zone to survive. So, and we know that life can withstand extreme conditions, di ba? Now, what about life as we don't know it? Yan. Okay, what about life as we don't know it? Okay, studies of life in extreme environments on Earth. Ito yung sagot sa tanong kanina, bakit natin nabanggit yung mga extremophiles na yan. Studies of life in extreme environments on Earth have led us to focus on some prime places to look for life. Yan, okay? So, like what? Ano yung mga pwedeng mabuhay itong mga extremophiles na ito. Okay, so we focus now on some prime places to look for life. Like for example, Mars. Yan. Okay? That's a candidate. Mars is a good candidate for the existence of life outside Earth. Okay, another would be Europa. Okay, Europa is one of the Galilean moons of Jupiter. Okay, it's Europa. Then we have Titan. Titan is the largest moon of Saturn. Okay, Titan is also a good candidate for the existence of life. Okay, then we have Enceladus, also a moon of Saturn. Yan, malalaman natin later kung bakit. Okay, let's focus now on the planet Mars, the possibility of life on the planet Mars. Okay, now Mars is probably the planet that is most likely to harbor life. Okay, bakit? There's geologic evidence, there's abundant geologic evidence from space probes that Mars once had a thicker atmosphere and liquid water on its surface. Okay, so may mga ebidensya, geologic evidence, okay, that Mars probably once had a thicker atmosphere and water to support life. Alright? Okay. Now, at present, we haven't found water yet. So, there's no liquid water on the surface. Bakit? Kasi we know that the Martian atmosphere is so thin. Diba? So, mababa yung atmospheric pressure. So, water would vaporize. Okay, but evidence for liquid water may have occurred in the past. Yeah, and there's evidence for liquid water in the past. So our space probes, NASA, they discovered canals. And canals, channels, and these channels may have been created by running water. Like, look at this picture, yan. Diba, kanal yan. O, paano na-form yan? So, liquid water might have flowed, yan, creating those channels or canals. Okay, so the Martian surface has canals that may have been carved by running water. So this is a geologic evidence that water once have flowed on the Martian surface. Yan, itong mga tributaries na yan, parang mga ilog. So that's an evidence, geologic evidence, that water once have flowed on the Martian surface. Yan. Okay, ito, mga canals din yan, di ba? Okay, parang mga dried up river beds. So, water once flowed on the Martian surface. Okay? So, nasan ngayon yung tubig sa Mars? Now, the water may have been trapped in the polar ice cap. Okay? So, Mars, may polar ice cap sa Mars. And the polar ice caps contains mostly what? Carbon dioxide, dry ice. Okay, and also may contain solidified water. Okay, so nandun yung tubig. Nasa polar ice caps. Okay. Alright. Ayun, so that's the polar ice caps of Mars that may contain water in solid form. Hindi siya liquid. Okay. Alright, so we know from history that the United States intensified their exploration of Mars. So first, they launched the Viking probes in the mid-1970s. And the Viking probes, they carried experiments to detect the presence of microorganisms in the Martian soil. Alright? Ayan. So, ito yung Viking. Dalawa yan. Viking 1 and Viking 2. Alright. So, yan. Mga Viking landers ito. Then meron silang tong Viking, merong retractable arm, robotic arm to scoop out Martian soil, kukuha ng sample soil sa Mars. Okay, so these are just some panoramic photographs of the Martian surface taken by the Viking probes. Yan, so Mars is like a frozen desert. Yan, maraming rocks, parang disyerto. Ayan, okay? The Martian soil is red because of iron oxide, kalawang. Okay? Kaya nga tinawag na Mars, diba? Mars from the god of war. Okay. Right, so here's a panoramic view of the Martian terrain. So, Mars is like a desert. Frozen desert kasi nga malayo. Mas malayo yung Mars sa Earth. Okay? Alright, so that's these are some photos taken by the Viking space probe. Okay, now inside Viking is a special instrument that can carry out experiments to detect the presence of microorganisms kung may bacteria dun sa Martian soil. Alright. Okay, so you had the sampling arm that can scoop samples of the Martian soil, and the Martian soil was placed in those instruments to detect the presence of bacterial life. So, they found out that inconclusive yung detection nila. None were found. Okay? Alright, so some of the latest Mars information comes from 5 active probes. Okay, including 3 rovers and 3 orbiters. Okay, ngayon merong bago, yung Perseverance rover. Okay, so some of the active probes have Pathfinder, Mars Odyssey, Mars Express, Sojourner, Opportunity rover, Curiosity rover, and we have the Perseverance rover. Okay? So, itong Perseverance rover, we have to take note of this kasi mayroong helicopter. Yan, mayroong helicopter sa loob niyan. Okay. Alright, so here is a picture of Pathfinder. Yan, maliit lang yan na rover. Okay, so this is Pathfinder. Okay, then this is the Opportunity Mars rover. Yan, maliit din yan. And we have Curiosity. Ito, kasi laki to ng Volkswagen. Malaki tong rover na to. Okay, so, although Mars has the most Earth-like environment, kasi parang disyerto dito sa Earth. Okay, in the solar system, the surface is too dry and too cold and affected by UV rays kasi nga walang ang oxygen, so walang ozone. Okay, to meet the requirements for habitability. So, dry siya, malamig, tapos the surface is bombarded by UV rays, so it failed to meet the requirements for habitability. Pero malay natin, di ba? Life finds a way, like the extremophiles, di ba? So, our search for possible life on Mars continues. Yan, hindi tayo titigil. Kasi kung may mga extremophiles dito sa Earth, why not on Mars, di ba? So, NASA continues the search for possible life on the Martian surface. Okay. Alright, so what about the possibility of life on Europa? Alright, so Europa is one of the Galilean moons. Ito, isa ito sa mga na-discover ni Galileo about 200 years ago. Okay, and these are some pictures taken by the Voyager space probe. And Voyager discovered that Europa is covered with ice. The surface of Europa is covered with water ice. Okay. So, anong ina-implication nito knowing that Europa is covered with ice? So, we know here on Earth that sa surface, pag nag-ice yung water, di ba, nagsosolidify yung surface. But at the bottom, it remains in liquid form. Di ba? So, we can apply that in Europa. So, on the surface, you have solid ice, but beneath that is liquid water. Okay? So, pag may tubig, may life, di ba? So, Europa is a good candidate for the existence of life. Because we know for a fact that at the bottom of that icy surface is liquid water. Okay. And in 2013, the Hubble Space Telescope discovered water venting from the surface of Europa. Venting meaning parang geyser. Diba? So, this discovery of water vapor that is ejecting would be an evidence that there's liquid water beneath the icy sheet of Europa. Okay, as discovered by the Hubble Space Telescope. Okay. Ayan. So, Hubble, the Space Telescope, discovered water vapor venting. So, there must be liquid water beneath the solid icy sheet of Europa. Okay, so this discovery by the Hubble Space Telescope strengthens Europa's position as the top candidate for potential habitability. Okay, so NASA is now planning for a mission to Europa in the near future. So magpapadala sila ng robotic probe, and this robotic probe would drill. Okay, it would drill into the solid icy sheet of Europa using lasers. Yan. So magbubutas sila dun sa icy solid sheet of Europa, and once they have penetrated the icy sheet, they will send a robotic autonomous submarine dun sa ilalim. Okay, to detect the presence of life beneath the icy sheet of Europa. Isn't that fantastic? Di ba? Amazing concept. So sana maging totoo ito so that we can answer that million-dollar question. Meron bang life sa Europa? Alright? Okay. What about the possibility of life on Titan? Titan is the largest moon of Saturn. Okay, now Titan is the only moon in the solar system that has a thick atmosphere. And did you know that the atmosphere is made of nitrogen? Parang Earth, di ba? Our atmosphere is about 70% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. Sa Titan, ganun din. It's mostly nitrogen. Plus, you have gases, methane, and argon, yan. So, Titan's atmosphere is similar to the Earth's atmosphere. Nitrogen-based. Ayan, okay? Alright, and the United States had launched the Cassini-Huygens probe on Saturn. Okay? Cassini-Huygens. Dalawang ano yan. You have the Cassini probe and you have the Huygens probe. Yung Huygens space probe landed on Titan. Yan, okay? And this is a photograph of the surface of Titan taken by the Huygens probe. So, mapapansin nyo yung bato, yung mga bato. So, ano ba yung mga bato na yan? So, you will notice shiny, parang bilog. Bilog yung mga bato. So, anong ibig sabihin nito? So, paano naging bilog yan? There must be liquid flowing on the surface of Titan. And photos taken by Cassini discovered lakes. May mga lakes sa Titan. But these lakes, they are not made of water, but these are methane. Liquid methane ito. Okay? Water in liquid form cannot exist on Titan kasi nga sobrang lamig. water will solidify on Titan. Pero methane, hindi. Okay? So, they discovered methane lakes on the surface of Titan. Okay? And they also discovered a molecule on Titan. This molecule is called acrylonitrile. Acrylonitrile. Alright? So, this molecule is a vital component of the cell. Ayan. So, hindi natin maaalis yung possibility that Titan may harbor life. Okay? Because of this molecule. Acrylonitrile. Alright. Hirap i-pronounce niyan. Okay. What about the possibility of life on Enceladus? Enceladus also is one of the moons of Saturn. Now, discovered by the Cassini probe, there is the presence of liquid water. Nagve-vent yung tubig sa surface ng Enceladus as discovered by the Cassini probe. Ayan. So, meron na, oh. Okay, parang ano to, parang Europa. Pero matindi yung mga venting ng liquid water sa Enceladus. Okay, so Enceladus may also support life. Kasi there's water vapor venting on the icy surface of Enceladus. Okay? Alright, so Mars, Europa, Titan, and Enceladus. Okay. Now, how are we searching for ET, extraterrestrial life, and possibly the existence of intelligent life outside our solar system? Okay, how can we find it? Alright. So, in astronomy, meron tayong tinatawag na Drake's equation. Right, my dear netizens, ladies and gentlemen, look at the screen. Ito yung equation. Okay, yung Drake's equation. Now, I am not a math major, pero ito lang ibig sabihin yan, yung Drake equation. So, think about this. There are billions of stars in our Milky Way. And there are billions of galaxies in the observable universe. Okay, to me, you just look up, di ba? Hindi niyo mabilang yung mga between in our Milky Way. And even in a telescope, you cannot count the billions of galaxies in our observable universe. Okay? So, kung ganun karami ang mga stars, there must be planets that orbit those stars. Di ba? Kasi dami nila eh. So, there's a possibility that from those stars, there must be other planets orbiting those stars. Okay? Okay, with life. So, 1 in a billion G stars has the right set of conditions to make a planet like our planet Earth. Okay? Ayan. So, yun ang ibig sabihin ng Drake's equation. Okay. So, there must be other planets out there with biospheres. Parang dito sa Earth natin, there must be other planets like Earth with biospheres. Okay. So, have we discovered planets outside our solar system? Yes, meron na tayong na-discover na planets outside our solar system. We call them the exoplanets. Okay? And those exoplanets was discovered by the Kepler Space Telescope. Okay, the Kepler is a space observatory launched by NASA to discover Earth-sized planets orbiting other stars. Okay, the Kepler Space Telescope was named after the astronomer Johannes Kepler. The spacecraft was launched on March 7, 2009 into an Earth-trailing heliocentric orbit. So, yung Kepler Space Telescope, sinusundan lang niya yung Earth habang umiikot sa Sun. Okay? Alright. So, How does the Kepler Space Telescope identify an exoplanet? Okay, one method is known as the transit method. Alright, so for example, let's say, ito yung star. Look at the picture, ladies and gentlemen, may star. Now, pag tinignan nyo yan sa Kepler Space Telescope, pag merong slight dimming o there's a decrease in brightness, isa lang ibig sabihin nun, may nag-block dun sa harapan ng image ng star. So, ano yung nag-block dun? There must be a planet blocking the image. So, there's a decrease in brightness. Parang eclipsing. Okay? And that is recorded in the spectrograph. Okay? So, may planet na nag-transit doon sa face ng star. So, nagkaroon ng decrease in brightness. Okay? Alright. So, that's what we call the transit method. Okay? Alright. Okay. So, that's one way of detecting the presence of exoplanets. Now, our prime candidate worlds in the search for life beyond the solar system are terrestrial type planets within their habitable zones of their stars. So, dapat yung planeta nasa habitable zones ng star nila. Okay? Alright, so that's how we search for life beyond the solar system. Alright, so we're back, my dear netizens. Now, in the last segment, I mentioned something about the Kepler Space Telescope. And we know that the Kepler Space Telescope had discovered lots of exoplanets. Alright? Now, can we go to those exoplanets, my dear netizens? We can't go. Unfortunately, we cannot go. We cannot visit those exoplanets, again, because of their extreme distance from us. Those exoplanets are millions of light years away from us. So with our present technology, it's impossible for us to visit those exoplanets unless we have warp drive technology like in Star Trek. Okay? So, if we cannot go, then how? How do we reach those exoplanets? How do we determine whether life exists on those exoplanets? Okay? Now, astrobiologists are looking for global biomarkers. Okay, these global biomarkers should involve changes in the atmosphere or surface chemistry that can only be the result of life processes. Okay? Ayan, so ayan yung hinahanap ngayon natin. Since we cannot visit those exoplanets, astrobiologists are now looking for these global biomarkers. So what are these global biomarkers? So number one is oxygen. So if you find oxygen in any of those exoplanets, then ano yung assumption natin doon? So there must be some photosynthetic organisms that must have created that oxygen. Diba? So pag may oxygen doon sa exoplanet na yan, that means only one thing, that there must be some photosynthetic organisms. Like what happened to our planet 2 billion years ago when cyanobacteria had evolved and they harnessed the energy from the sun through photosynthesis and emitting oxygen for the first time. Okay? So oxygen is a very significant biomarker. Okay, so kung ang exoplanet ay may oxygen, then our assumption is that there must be some photosynthetic organisms. Okay? Alright, another important biomarker that astrobiologists are searching would be the presence of methane. Now, we know here on Earth that methane is produced by microorganisms. So, kung may methane dun sa exoplanet na yan, then again, that means only one thing, that there must be some microorganisms that's producing that methane. Okay? Alright, so that's life as we don't know it, di ba? Okay. So, large amounts of oxygen and methane in the atmosphere of an extrasolar terrestrial planet would be a smoking gun. Ayan. So, yun ang hinahanap ngayon ng mga astrobiologists, the presence of oxygen and methane. Pag meron silang nakitang ganyan in any of those exoplanets, then that would be the smoking gun, my dear netizens. Okay? Alright, so paano nila mahanap yung oxygen and methane? They would utilize spectroscopy. Okay, spectroscopy yan. So, it's a special instrument that uses light, yung colors of light to determine the elements. Okay? Alright, so NASA is planning this mission called the Terrestrial Planet Finder. Okay, using spectroscopy, this should allow atmospheric chemists and biologists to use the relative amounts of gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, ozone, and methane to find whether an extrasolar planet may support life. Okay? So that's the future plan of NASA in the search for extraterrestrial life beyond the solar system. Okay, the terrestrial planet finder. Okay, all right, using spectroscopy. Okay, but that's another story, spectroscopy. All right, so aside from the Kepler Space Telescope, what other methods are employed? Okay, to search for life or possibly intelligent life outside the solar system. Okay, kasi baka akala natin yung Kepler Space Telescope lang. Now, here on Earth, astronomers are using radio telescopes, like the one in the picture, ladies and gentlemen. So, a radio telescope is a huge antenna, yan, like a dish antenna, that captures signals, radio signals from outer space. Okay? So, using radio telescopes, we can search for the radio sky for alien signals. Diba? And in the United States, there is a institute called SETI, the SETI Institute. Now, SETI is the acronym for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Now, the SETI Institute uses radio telescopes combined with optical telescopes to search for signals, my dear netizens. Diba? Signals that might be emitted or broadcast by technologically advanced life forms. See? Using those huge dish antennas. Yung parang satellite dish, pero malalaki yung mga yan. So they are scanning the sky, searching for signals that might be emitted or broadcast by alien life forms, technologically advanced alien life forms. Fantastic! Di ba? Amazing itong SETI na ito. Utilizing dish antennas like the one in the picture so that they can capture these alien signals. Okay? Alright, one such huge radio telescope that SETI has been using is the Arecibo radio telescope. Now look at that, ladies and gentlemen, my dear netizens. Ang laki ng radio telescope na ito. Sobra. Ang laki. But this is just the second largest radio telescope. Okay, the biggest, the largest radio telescope in the world is in China. Nasa China yan. Okay? Alright. So, results of the SETI search. Unfortunately, it's still inconclusive. Yung mga na-detect nilang mga signals galing din sa atin eh. Okay, like yung mga ignition ng kotse, yan, nadidetect ng mga antennas. So, the search is still inconclusive, but they are still continuing to scan the sky using these huge antennas. Yan, hindi sila tumitigil. Okay, and in November 16, 1974, okay, a 169 seconds message was sent by the Arecibo Radio Telescope. Okay, itong message na ito, ginawa nila yung team ni Carl Sagan, if you're familiar with that famous astronomer Carl Sagan. So Carl Sagan and his team, they developed that message that was sent by the Arecibo Radio Telescope. And they pointed the radio telescope at globular cluster M13. That's about 25,000 light years away from us. Okay? And here is the coded message developed by Carl Sagan and his team. So, just follow my cursor. So, yung first layer, okay, that's the numbers 1 to 10. Then, yung second layer, those are the atomic numbers of biological elements like carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, then the third layer, you have the nucleotides, the nitrogenous bases, apat yan, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Then, you could see there the shape of the DNA molecule, which is the double helix. Then, may korteng tao, may human figure doon. Then, below that is our solar system. And below that is the shape of the Arecibo dish antenna. So, that was the coded message that was sent, okay, by the Arecibo Radio Telescope. So, kung nagpadala po tayo ng mensahe, ng message, anong hihintayin natin? Di ba? Reply. So, we are now waiting for a reply. Sana may mag-reply, di ba? Pag may nag-reply, whoa, may aliens. Di ba? Okay. Alright, so if there is a high possibility for extraterrestrial life, or aliens, di ba? So, nasaan ngayon sila? Where is everybody? Where are those aliens? Nasaan yung mga yan? Bakit wala pa tayong nakikita? Okay, may mga haka-haka, yung mga UFO sightings. So, to kaya ba yan? Hindi natin alam, di ba? So, where's everybody? Where are those aliens? Okay, this was the same question that was asked by Enrico Fermi. Okay, sabi ni Enrico Fermi, nasan yung mga aliens na yan? So, where is everyone? Diba? So, this is what we call in astronomy as the Fermi paradox. Okay? So, the paradoxal question Enrico asked was, so, where's everyone? Nasaan yung mga aliens na yan? Yung ba yung mga UFO sightings ba yan? Wala pa nga tayong nakikitang concrete evidence of intelligent life, di ba? So, where's everyone? Okay, so these are the possible solutions to the Fermi paradox. Okay, so number 1, bakit tayo walang nakikitang alien? Bakit wala pang alien na na-encounter natin, di ba? So, the reason is, we are alone. Nag-iisa lang tayo. We are the first. And there is no galactic civilization. Ayan. Wala tayong makitang aliens, wala tayong na-encounter na aliens, my dear netizens, kasi we are alone. Diba? Nag-iisa lang tayo dito sa universe. And there is no galactic civilization. Okay? Alright, another reason. Where's everyone? But nasan yung mga aliens na yan? Okay, now, alien civilizations are common. But no one has colonized the galaxy. Diba? Hindi sila lumalabas. No one has colonized the galaxy. Now, why? Bakit ganon? Now, there are several reasons. One reason is that maybe because of technological difficulties. Kaya hindi sila makapag-colonize ng galaxy because of these technological difficulties. Now, interstellar travel is difficult. Maraming perils, maraming dangers in interstellar travel. Okay, like radiation, microgravity, life support. So, interstellar travel is difficult. And it is expensive. Diba? Look at the Apollo program. The United States spent billions of dollars in their Apollo program. So that's one reason why they failed to colonize the galaxy. Because interstellar travel is difficult and is more expensive or dangerous than we think. Okay? Alright, another reason is that they have no desire to explore the galaxy. Unlike us, tayo lang, we humans, we have this desire, nasa dugo natin to explore outer space. Okay, it may be our desire to explore is unusual. Gusto nga, we want to leave our planet, we want to explore, we want to go where no man has gone before. Di ba? Itong mga aliens na to, ayaw nila. They don't choose to leave their stars. Di ba? Okay, so that's one reason why they failed to colonize the galaxy. Kasi ayaw nila eh. Diba? Ayaw nila. Tayo lang yung may gusto. We want to boldly go where no man has gone before. Yan. Okay. Okay. Yan. Gusto ko yung motto na yan, yung Star Trek motto na yan. Okay, that has been my motto ever since. Okay. Another reason why we don't encounter aliens, it's because many of these alien civilizations, they tend to destroy themselves. Diba? Like in the story of Superman, diba? Yung planeta ni Superman na sumabog. Or in Star Wars, diba? I think you're familiar with the Death Star sa Star Wars. Yung Death Star, ano yan? Planet destroyer yan, di ba? Okay? I'm sure you're familiar with Star Wars. Ayan, the Death Star destroys planets. O baka ganun. So many civilizations, they tend to destroy themselves. Okay? Or in the second movie of Star Trek, yung The Wrath of Khan, if you're familiar with that, di ba? Yung doomsday weapon. Ayan, that can also destroy planets. And The Wrath of Khan. It's my favorite Star Trek movie, by the way. The Wrath of Khan. Okay, so many civilizations, they tend to destroy themselves. Okay? Alright, and there is alien galactic civilization, but they are deliberately avoiding us. So, baka may aliens, pero they are avoiding us. And they are hiding their existence from us. Malay nyo, yung katabi ninyo, o diba? Tumingin kayo sa kaliwa, tumingin kayo sa kanan. Baka yung katabi ninyo ay alien na. Diba? Baka nagtatago lang sila dyan. They are disguising as one of us. Diba? Hindi natin alam. They are avoiding us, hiding their existence from us. Baka nagtatago sila sa ilalim ng dagat. Di ba? Okay, we don't know. Okay? Alright, so that's one possible solution to the Fermi paradox. Alright, my dear netizens, ladies and gentlemen. So, habang wala pa tayong nakikitang mga aliens or alien life forms, we still continue the search for intelligent life. Okay? Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the Voyager space probe. There are 2 Voyager space probes, and they are now out in deep space. Now, what is remarkable about Voyager, my dear netizens? Now, inside Voyager, you have a golden disk. Yan, itong golden disk na ito. Now, recorded in this golden disk are images of our planet and the sounds of planet Earth. Okay? So, the Voyager space probes, they are like a message in a bottle. Baka may makapulot na alien. Okay, alien civilization. Alright, so that's Voyager in deep space. And who knows? Alright? The Voyager space probes might encounter alien civilization. Okay, like a message in a bottle. Alright, my dear netizens. So, we still continue the search. So, ang tanong kung may aliens ba? So, hanggang ngayon, wala. Okay, so we continue the search. And that's the role of science. Diba? We need concrete evidence. So, we just continue the search for extraterrestrial life. So, for now, we have only one planet Earth. And we won't have other ones for a long time. Baka sabihin nyo, sir, magko-colonize tayo sa Mars. Matagal pa yan. So, we have only one planet. So, ano gagawin natin? So, we have to take care of it. Okay, we have to take care of our planet Earth. Okay? Alright, so that ends my astrobiology talk. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your presence. I would like to thank the officers and crew of the BEDAN Society of Young Astronomers who made this live stream event possible. Okay, please continue to check, like, share our Facebook page, the BEDAN Society of Young Astronomers. Okay, so this is Professor Jun Cajigal saying, live long and prosper, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.